Hello and welcome. My name is Wendy and I'm your online church director. Wherever you may be watching from, we are excited that you are here. If you happen to live close enough to attend our campus in South Ogden, I want to invite you to join us on a Sunday morning at 9:30 or 11. If you don't live close enough to attend our campus, I invite you to join me at whconline.com. This is where you can continue to watch the message live, join a chat room anonymously if you would like, and learn more about online gatherings that may be happening or starting in your area. Stay tuned till the end of message and I'll tell you more about what online gatherings are. Again, we're so thrilled that you are here with us today. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the message.
Faith. What is it? Being sure of our hope, convinced of what we can't see. By faith, we understand the world was set in order at God's command. By faith, Abel offered God a greater sacrifice than Cain, and for his faith, God commended him as righteous. By faith, Noah trusted God and constructed an ark for the deliverance of his family. By faith, Abraham was willing to sacrifice Isaac, his only son, believing God would still fulfill his promises. By faith, Moses chose to be mistreated with the people of God, then enjoy sin's fleeting pleasure. By faith, God's chosen nation crossed the Red Sea on dry ground and praised him as it swallowed up the Egyptians. By faith, Rahab the prostitute escaped destruction because she welcomed the spies in peace. Time will fail me if I tell of Gideon, David, and the prophets. By faith, they administered justice, shut the mouths of lions, quenched raging fire. But others were imprisoned, murdered, and wandered in deserts, mountains, and openings in the earth. We are surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses. So get rid of every weight, of every sin, and run. Run with endurance the race set before us. Keep your eyes fixed on Jesus. He is the champion and guide of our faith. For promised joy, he endured the cross, thought nothing of its shame, and having risen again, has been handed his deserved glory at the right hand of the throne of God.
Well, let me also say welcome to everybody who is here. Delighted that you have joined us today. Also want to welcome those at the Weber County Jail who tune in on Tuesday nights, and we're delighted to have you with us as well. And a little bit later in the service, just to give a little preview, we're going to celebrate with some people who are going public with their faith in Jesus today. We call that baptism, and we're going to participate in that in just a little bit. But let's turn our attention to our series that we're in right now. It's called His Story, and we're looking at the Bible, all of it from cover to cover. And we're taking a crash course in the Bible so that we can be more familiar with it, so that we can engage it all the more. Because truth be told, many times we can pick it up and we think, man, it just seems like a bunch of random stories and some other stuff that's hard to understand. And how does it all fit together? Here's what we said from the beginning, and I think it's important to say it again. The Bible has many Bible stories, but the Bible tells just one story. And from beginning to end, there is this thin red line of God's work to invite people like us into a relationship with Him. And God reached down into this broken world and offered us Himself. And He revealed to us who He is and what He's doing. And so in the first week, we took a look at the first 5 books of the Bible. It's sometimes referred to as the books of Moses or the Pentateuch. Last week, we looked at the history books, 12 books over the span of about 1,500 years in about 30 minutes. And today, we're going to turn our attention to another group of books called the wisdom books. What is wisdom? Well, wisdom, we might think, that would make me a 5-time champion on Jeopardy. That's not wisdom. That's knowledge or information. That would be cool. But wisdom is actually applying truth to life. It's a rubber meets the road kind of thing where we don't just know it, but it actually makes its way into our lives. Now, I recognize that when it comes to wisdom and gaining direction for our lives, there's a bunch of different options that are out there. We can turn in a number of different directions. And one of them, pops to my mind instantly. And I'm thinking, of course, of that bottomless well of wisdom called country music. Let me share with you a couple of titles. These are true titles. I'm not making this up. Of country music songs. And I think you'll see just wisdom oozing from here. Billy broke my heart at Walgreens, and I cried all the way to Sears. Don't know what that is quite about. Drop kick me, Jesus, through the goalposts of life. 4 on the floor and a 5th under the seat. I sent her artificial flowers for her artificial love. If my nose were full of nickels, I'd blow it all on you. If the phone doesn't ring, it's me. If you don't leave me, I'll find someone who will. Redneck Martian stole my baby. And then this is my personal favorite. One day when you swing that skillet, my face ain't gonna be there. So, those are words to live by there. Where can we gain some wisdom? Because there are some different options, and thankfully, God has given us wisdom. And there are 5 books in the Old Testament that are dedicated to that, not just knowing things, but applying it to life. And there's some questions that I think we've really wrestled with at one time or another, maybe even one of them right now. And my guess is we would love to apply wisdom to them. You ever asked any of this? Should I take this job? And how would I know? Is she the one for me? God want me to move? Should I stay or should I leave? And many times we just don't know the answer to those questions. And here's my guess about many of us here in this room, and I'm included in this, that when we look back on our lives and we think of our greatest regret, and maybe you got a mental image of what that is right now, and you think, man, if I could have applied some wisdom to that situation, how different would that story be right now? So what are we supposed to do in moments like that? How do we apply wisdom? And maybe the question really that is the right one for all of these kind of questions goes something like this. What is the wise thing to do? And many times we go, well, I don't know because I can't see the future, so I don't know how it's going to turn out. Well, God has given us direction that we can apply in the moment, even without knowing the future. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make our way through those 5 wisdom books, and I'm going to try to give you an overview of those and some of the important aspects that it can help us with when it comes to the whole arena of wisdom. So the first one, it looks like Job, but it's pronounced Job, and is the name of the central character of that book. Many commentators believe this is the oldest or one of the oldest books in the Bible, and it's told like a story. And it starts out with Job, and life is great for Job. He has a big family, a happy family. He is successful at all he does. He has wealth and, plenty to live on. He loves God as well. But then there's this weird part, and many people don't know what to make of this in the story of Job, because we get this scene where the devil comes into the presence of God, and it becomes a little bit like the devil went down to Georgia, if you know that song. He was looking for a soul to steal. And so the devil comes in the presence of God, and he says, I'm going to make you a wager. I'll bet you that Job only is faithful to you because you, God, have blessed him. But you take away all the stuff that he has, and Job will drop you like a hot rock, and it'll be over. And God says, okay, I'll take that bet. He puts some limitations around that, but it's not a whole lot, because Job loses a lot. He loses all of his wealth, which was expressed in things like flocks and herds back then. He loses most of his family. He comes down with an illness and sores, and he's just in pain every day. And in that story, his wife and 4 friends come alongside Job, and they seek to offer him some counsel. And they try to get him to do one of 2 things. One, curse God. Because obviously God is not with you and God does not have your back. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in the situation in which you are now. So just jettison that part of your faith and move on with something else. So that's one. The second thing they try to get him to do is confess. Because Job, obviously you must have done something wrong in your life for you to be in this situation here. So just come clean and confess what it is. But Job will have none of it. And he stays faithful through that whole difficult journey of loss and suffering. And this book wrestles with one of those questions that's been around for a long, long time. And as a pastor now, I hear this question a lot in our day. Why do bad things happen to good people? Right? Is God out to get me? Did I do something wrong? And those same issues still just run around this world of ours in a day like this? And there is this whole movement, underway in our day that says, well, karma, man, you get what you give, for better or for worse. Can I just say this? This book, and really the Bible as a whole, knows nothing about karma. And the good news with that is we don't really want karma. What we want is God's grace. Because if we get what it is that we give, we are all in a whole heap of trouble. But you know what God offers to us? He offers us His grace. Grace means undeserved favor. It's getting what you don't deserve. All of God's love, all of God's provision, all of God's promises, all of God. And that's what our hearts long for. A couple things that come along with this story. Is it a true story or is it a morality tale? We get this scene in heaven and, some other stuff that goes on in there. There are names and places that are mentioned. And so the indication is that this is a true story. And let me just throw something else out there. And I'm just going to tease you a little bit with this. If you ever wonder, does the Bible talk about dinosaurs? I believe it does in the story of Job. It doesn't use the word dinosaur. And you got to kind of journey in that book for a while to get there. But if you're looking for dinosaurs, look in Job. And I'm just going to tease you with that, okay? You can check that out sometime on your own time. Another question along with this. What is the main point of this? That God's up there making wagers and we're down here struggling along with this. What is the point of this story? I think in a world like ours, we all know that suffering is a reality. That there are people who have gone through all kinds of different grief and loss and hardship and struggle, either with themselves or with something they can't control or in the lives of the people who are around them. And many times, I think we ask the question that Job asks throughout this story. He doesn't listen to say, I'm not going to curse God and I'm not going to confess something I didn't do. But he goes to God and he says, God, why? And if you could just give me some indication of why, it would give some meaning and some sense to all of this that I'm experiencing right now. And the story of Job tells us that suffering is not punishment, but it's often a test or a trial. And Job never gets the answer to the question why, at least not in this world. But you know what he does get the answer to? He goes to God and he asks why. And then finally, near the end of the book, God responds. And in about 3 chapters worth, God says things like this in all kinds of different ways. Where were you when I put the universe in place? Where were you when I hung the sky at night and the stars in the sky? Where were you when I formed the earth and put in place the boundaries of the water and the land? It's as if God says, Job, we got a little bit of a perspective thing to learn. And so Job doesn't get the answer to the question why. He does get the answer to the question who. Who is God? What is He like? And can He be trusted even in difficult and dark times? And Job says, yes. At the end of the story, he's rewarded with more than he had before. And I think if we are in that space where we wonder, it gets a little hard, it gets dark, it gets difficult. Is there meaning and purpose to this? Oh, there is. And there's a fascinating part of this story, and it's difficult, to explain it, but I'm going to take a shot at it. Many times we talk about trusting God, and rightly so. Right? We talk about our hope being in God and all of that, and that is absolutely right and true. And our hearts were made to be in a relationship with God and to trust Him and to walk with Him. Job's story tells us almost the flip side of that. Because in that moment, there was a real-life person that God trusted to walk through some of the worst that this broken world can dish out, and to stay faithful, and to hold on to faith, and still believe that God is good, and that God is awesome. And I wonder, because Job never saw that side of that exchange, I wonder still if there are moments in which God knows there are people He can trust to walk through some difficult things and to stay true, to stay faithful, to keep journeying together with Him. Does that mean we don't ask any questions along the way? Well, Job sure did. And it wasn't always easy. But he kept on. Another book, the biggest one in the Bible, is the book of Psalms. Psalms is a collection of songs, the lyrics, and also prayers. And it is a collection of those, and most of them are written by David, but they were not all written by David. There's a whole collection of different pieces that are there. And some of those words are some of the most beautiful words that we have, and some of the most familiar words that we have even still in our culture today. Psalm 23, and my guess is you've heard these words somewhere. The Lord is my shepherd, I have all that I need. He lets me rest in green meadows. He leads me beside peaceful streams. He renews my strength. He guides me along right paths, bringing honor to His name. Even when I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid, for You are close beside me. Your rod and Your staff protect me and comfort me. You prepare a feast for me in the presence of my enemies. You honor me by anointing my head with oil. My cup overflows with blessings. Surely goodness and unfailing love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever. That is beautiful. But it's more than beautiful. Because what is being done in this collection of songs and prayers is real life people in a real relationship with God expressing what that relationship is like and what the character and nature of God is like. And so this one was written by David, where he says, you want to know what it's like to walk in a relationship with God? He leads me and I have what I need. God provides for me. And even when I walk through the darkest place, and maybe you've heard it translated this way, even when I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Why? Because You are with me. Because You are bigger even than that. And so this informs us about what it's like to be in a relationship together with God. I think there's a practical aspect to these prayers and songs as well. One of the more frequent questions I get goes something like this. I'm a little bit uncertain how to pray. I'm a little bit nervous about that. I don't know how to do it. I don't know what to say. I don't know how it works. And so that's just kind of an area, of my life and my journey with God that, just is a big mystery or question mark to me. If you're in that category, can I make this suggestion to you? Pray a psalm. Many of them were written as prayers, and it's okay to pray a prayer that can help us understand what's included in that and how do you express that and how did somebody else do that. And to be more specific, you want to just praise and honor God, pray Psalm 8. You want to confess something, pray Psalm 51, which, by the way, is probably the darkest moment of the life of a guy by the name of King David after he had an affair with somebody else's wife, and now he is coming clean and his heart is heavy, and the realness and the honesty of that prayer is a remarkable thing as he talks very specifically about what he did and his desire to come clean with God. You want to just thank God for the things in your life? Psalm 100 from beginning to end gives thanks to God who has been so good. And so if you're wrestling with that whole arena of prayer, lean in the direction of those who have written down some of those prayers. And I think there's a great lesson for all of us here. If we're not sure what to bring to God in prayer, simply be honest with God. And maybe I'm speaking more about myself here, but you can figure this out for yourself. I think when we are taught how to pray and maybe modeled how to pray, it goes something like this, that we are taught to pray polite prayers. Pray prayers with flowery language and all good thoughts and everything like that. Well, if you've ever read any of the Psalms written by David, you would see something different. David had some enemies who were actually out to take his life. And some of the Psalms are David writing, God, take them out painfully. And I don't know if anybody can relate to that. And you go, well, is it okay to pray that? I'm not sure it's right to pray that, but you know what? If nothing else, it's honest. And I think that models for us that when we come to God, we are called and we are invited to come and be honest, not to just put on, a good appearance and speak in flowery language, but to be real and to tell God what truly is happening in our lives. The hard stuff as well, and to just share it. And the reality is, when we don't do that and we're just kind of pretending, the only one that we're fooling is ourselves, because God already knows anyway. But we're invited to be honest. Another book in the Old Testament, wisdom book, is Proverbs. And this was written by Solomon, the son of King David. And Proverbs are short statements about wisdom and folly. And often what you see is the affirmative, that's wisdom, and a statement, a sentence that follows it, which is often the contrast to that, or folly. And we might say, well, why should we lean in the direction of a guy named Solomon? He lived a long time ago, and why is, he any more important when it comes to that than anybody else? Let me give you a little bit of the backstory of Solomon and his wisdom, because there's a specific moment in his life where that originated. This is back in 1 Kings chapter 3. That night the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream, and God asked, "What do you want? Ask it, and I will give it to you." And by the way, the God of the Bible is not a genie, where we get this lamp and we rub it and he offers us 3 wishes. And this moment is very unusual where God does that. But he says to Solomon, hey, ask for anything and I'll give it to you. How would you answer that question? And I think many of us would think about all kinds of different things, that would serve us well. Solomon's answer, brilliant. Solomon replied, "You showed great and faithful love to your servant, my father David, because he was honest and true and faithful to you. And you have continued to show this great and faithful love to him today by giving him a son to sit on his throne. Now, O Lord my God, you have made me king instead of my father David, but I am like a little child who doesn't know his way around. And here I am in the midst of your own chosen people, a nation so great and numerous they cannot be counted. Give me an understanding of heart so that I can govern your people well and know the difference between right and wrong. For who by himself is able to govern this great people of yours?" The Lord was pleased that Solomon had asked for wisdom. So God replied, "Because you have asked for wisdom in governing my people with justice and have not asked for a long life or wealth," I love this, "or the death of your enemies, I will give you what you asked for. I will give you a wise and understanding heart such as no one else has ever had or will have." Here's what that means. Solomon's wisdom is divine in origin and supernatural in insight. And so there is reason to lean in that direction. And when the question was posed to him, "What do you want?" rather than wealth and fame and riches and all the other stuff that we might ask for, he said, "I'll take wisdom." But I got to tell you something about those Proverbs. Many of them are raw and unfiltered. They can come across as very blunt, but they claim to lead us in the direction of wisdom. Let me give you just a couple examples of all of that. Can a man scoop a flame into his lap and not have his clothes catch on fire? Can he walk on hot coals and not blister his feet? And we think, yeah, those are painful things. What are you talking about? So it is with the man who sleeps with another man's wife. He who embraces her will not go unpunished. Blunt, to the point. And it's just as someone who has been on the other side of some of those conversations, can I just say that I think there's something intending to lead us in the direction of wisdom there. And sometimes we don't like the way that that may confront us, but sometimes that is what we need. A beautiful woman who lacks discretion is like a gold ring in a pig's snout. And there's probably some things to unpack there from a couple thousand years ago about what that means. But again, blunt, to the point, giving direction. Don't visit your neighbors too often, or you will wear out your welcome. You know, if your family lives close by and you don't want to go over there, you can now give them, I got a Bible verse that says I can't come over. The biggest recurring theme in the book of Proverbs is something that sounds strange to us. It's the fear of the Lord. What are we supposed to cower, in terror? That God is going to get us, and maybe the more fun we have, the more He's going to drop the other shoe and become heavy and hard with us. And there's so many places in the Bible that tell us in a relationship with God, we're to approach Him like a son or a daughter. So it's not that. So what is it? This has the idea of respecting God, honoring God, recognizing that He is in a whole different category than I am. And there's a level of respect that comes along with that. I don't treat Him cavalierly. I don't just diss God or think that I can manipulate God or use God for my purposes. I'm here for Him, not the other way around. And that there is such a greatness and an awesomeness around God that there should be a little bit of a sense of this, holy unknown where we think, oh my goodness, what is all there? Kind of reminds me of a scene from one of the books that C.S. Lewis wrote, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and maybe you're familiar, with those books, where Jesus is portrayed like this huge, powerful lion. And after this encounter with the lion, and some of the kids were a little bit terrified there, and he wanders off, and they see him walking down the beach, and one of the kids says to the other ones who knows him better, says, is he safe? And the response is, oh no, he's not safe, but he is good. So there's a sense of the greatness of God, but there's also the goodness of God. And there is a level of respect and a relationship with Him that serves us well and leads us in the direction of wisdom. Fear of the Lord is the foundation of true knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. Another book in the Old Testament about wisdom, Ecclesiastes. If the book of Job does not mess with you, Ecclesiastes will. There are some things in there that are just bizarre to us. And it seems like it's somebody who's going against so much of what the Bible says. Right out of the chute in Ecclesiastes 1:1, he says, meaningless, meaningless. Basically, everything is meaningless. And we think, wow, does this Bible say that everything is meaningless? Here's a principle for all of the Bible, not just the book of Ecclesiastes. Context is king. So important. What is the book of Ecclesiastes? Many believe it was written by Solomon. It is the reflections of an old man on life after pursuing many things besides God. Solomon started out great. He got all, the wealth and fame and fortune that came along with his position. But then he began to drift. And he drifted away from God, and he pursued all the other avenues that we often look to in this life. Fame, fortune, pleasure, sex, accomplishments, and you know what? He got them all. But when he got to the end of all of that, what he discovered is it's empty. And so what he's doing in his later years is reflecting back on all of what he would call those wasted years of going down so many of the dead-end roads of life. And not that those things in and of themselves are bad things, but we were made for a relationship with God. And he tried to fill that space inside of himself with all the things that were never created to occupy that space. So late in the book, in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 13, he gives us really the reflection of what he has concluded now that his life is nearly over. That's the whole story. Here now is my final conclusion. Here's that idea again. Fear God, walk with Him. That means to journey with him, follow him, live for him, and obey his commands, for this is everyone's duty. You know, many people turn in God's direction because they were living their own life, and it feels like, they ran into a brick wall at 90 miles an hour and the wheels came off, and so they turn in God's direction. Solomon's story is the opposite of that. It's a guy who had it all, who accomplished everything that he wanted to, who, just achieved and then overachieved and got to the pinnacle of all that success and said, it didn't deliver, didn't satisfy. Only God ultimately satisfies. One more book of wisdom in the Old Testament, Song of Songs. Sometimes it's called the Song of Solomon. This was also written by Solomon, David's son, and if you know anything about this book, it could also be called 50 Shades of Solomon because it's a little bit spicy, if you know what I mean. What it is a love poem between a husband and a wife. And it is their expression back and forth, also includes some friends along the way, shortly before their marriage, mostly after their marriage, and they talk about life together without a whole lot of covering anything up. In chapter 1, in verse 2, it begins, "Kiss me and kiss me again, for your love is sweeter than wine. How fragrant your cologne, your name is like a spreading fragrance. No wonder all the young women love you." And let me assure you, it goes on from there and goes beyond kissing, if you know what I mean. And we think, what are we to make of that? I think what it tells us is that sex and sexuality is God's doing. It's his idea. He thought it up. And in reality, it is a gift of God, meant to provide something in the human experience unlike anything else. But here's the thing that comes along with it, and we see this cover to cover in the Bible, that the gift giver is also the one who can put the parameters around the gift. And what you see from the beginning to end goes something like this: that gift can be fully and should be fully expressed inside of a covenant relationship called marriage between a husband and a wife. And in that environment, God has given a gift to know one person in a way that we don't know anyone else. And it goes beyond biology, and it goes beyond commitment. It goes to the level of something that is sacred, something so powerful and so valuable. And the giver of the gift is the one who gets to determine the parameters of the gift. And it's pretty racy. And I think it goes against what most people, kind of picture when they think of church and sex, that often we think that's like oil and water, and those two things don't go together. And that's unfortunate, because God has given us a great gift. So tonight, maybe when somebody's behind a locked door and you're knocking and you're asking, what are you doing in there? They might be saying, doing a little Bible study, that's all, just Bible study. Nothing but the Bible in here. God tells it like it is, and in this picture, from his perspective, it is a beautiful thing. I want to give you one takeaway as we begin to wind down today, and I think it is the collective takeaway from a lot of what the wisdom books seek to just teach us. And I think it relates to something that's very important in our day. And the first part of it you may not agree with, but stay with me. Don't follow your heart. I think today that message is taught to us in a whole host of different ways. But so much of what wisdom tells us goes something like this: that in and of ourselves, our hearts are bent and broken, twisted and dark in ways that we don't often understand about ourselves, much less anyone else. And if we follow our hearts, chances are we're going to wind up in places that we never wanted to, but we find ourselves there anyway. So if we aren't to do that, what should we do? Follow Jesus, and he can renovate your heart. He can give you a new heart. And that's what we need, every single one of us. And we cannot do that on our own. You know, our insight, our wisdom, all of that is great. It only takes us so far. But on numerous occasions, the God who is for us has said that he can make us over, that he can give us a new heart. But that too is going to be his doing. And really in this world, it's a lifelong pursuit to walk in that direction with the God who has come to rescue us and lead us in wisdom. Not just knowing things, but applying truth to life. I'm going to invite you to bow your heads together with me. And I wonder if you have never crossed that line of faith into a personal relationship with God, could now be the time. It's just acknowledging the truth about ourselves, that we missed it. We missed our own standards, much less the holy God's. It's asking him to make us a part of his family, to forgive us, to make us over, and that we want to journey with him through life. And God, thank you that anywhere, anytime, we can take that step of faith and trust and know that a great and holy God is there, because you're still doing what you have been doing since the beginning of time, seeking to redeem this broken world of ours, and that includes every one of us. So do your work, God, in us, and may we commit ourselves to walking together with the God who can make us new, who can make us whole, who can make us over. And we thank you for who you are and all the good gifts you extend to us. And we ask and pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.
We really hope that you enjoyed the message today. Join us next week at our South Ogden campus, or visit us at whconline.com, where you can learn more about online gatherings. What's an online gathering? Maybe right now you're watching from home. Why not next week invite friends to join you and watch the message together? We believe that location is not a limitation to your church community. By visiting us at whconline.com, hitting join an online gathering, I will be in touch and we can talk more about what it looks like to join an online gathering or host your own. Thanks so much for joining us this week. We really hope you have a great week.